Okay, well, welcome to the Goud crowd. I'm your host, Goud. Let's see if I can do this. I'm actually alone today, so here, I'm going to play the intro and then I'll come back.
From the Great Basin to the Rockies to the four corners of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, this is KMMU Main Street Media Utah, coming to you live. You can find us on Rumble, YouTube, X, and our website, kmmu.org. Please join our host, Goud Maragani, for the Goud Crowd, the only radio broadcast good enough to be monitored by Utah's State Bureau of Investigation. Take it away, Goud.
I give up.
For the Goud Crowd, the only radio broadcast good enough to be monitored by Utah's State Bureau of Investigation. Take it away, Goud. From the Great Basin to the Rockies.
Right, I'm trying to figure out how to get rid of this thing. I don't know how to get rid of it. Oh, show. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so there may be some technical difficulties today. My producer is not here, but welcome to the Goud crowd. I'm your host, Goud. I have no idea if that introduction worked. I don't think it did. And that's just the reality of having a crappy computer, which I've gone over tons of times, and I'm not going to bore you with the story. I will say I had quite the weekend. I actually fractured my elbow. So you can see, let's see if you can see it. So this, I have like a splint on. It's a lame story. I was mowing my lawn. This is really like an old man story because, I'm 47. I was mowing my lawn. I was pushing the lawnmower up the hill, and then I slipped on, I guess, some mowed grass. And when I slipped, I actually just like landed on my side, and I fractured my elbow. So anyway, it's been kind of awkward because I'm right-handed and I fractured my right elbow. So it's very unfortunate. So let's start the show. We'll talk about events that are coming up. So Saturday is the Utah Republican Party organizing convention. And so I assume that a lot of you will be going. And actually, we're going to have today, we'll have on, I think, we're going to have on two of the candidates, I think. We'll have Stafford Sievert Palmieri. She'll be calling in. She's one of the candidates running for secretary. Last week we had on Olivia Dawn. And so this is her opponent and the current secretary. And then she'll be on about 5:30. And then at 6:10, Phil is going to call in. And he's one of the two people running for chair. So we'll talk to him. I know in that race over the weekend, we actually had the Trump endorsed Rob Axon, the incumbent. And so I'll ask Phil about that, and we'll have a few other questions as well. And then after that, we may have Rob on. I invited him on. We've played some phone tag, and I haven't been able to talk to him, so I'm hoping he'll call in at 6:30. I don't know. Now, because I don't have a producer, if you want to call in, you're going to actually have to call my number. So let me see if I can adjust. I haven't done this in a while, but if I can adjust my little thing on here, I can put my phone number. Let's see here. Oh, there's like a bunch of little notes in here. I don't know if you guys care to hear this. Let's go. Disagree better, so let's go. Okay, let's see here if I can find. I don't remember how to do this here. Okay. Okay. Give me 1 second here. Call in. Okay, there you go. So if anybody wants to call in to comment on the races that are going on or to really comment on anything, feel free to you can call my cell phone number. I have it sitting next to me. It's 385-237-7960. And then I'll just put you up to the microphone and we can go like that. That's just going to have to be how it works this time because I don't have a call screener. Okay, So like I said, our first call in from a candidate should be at 5:30. I think before then, we may have Tracy call in to talk about some of the race issues, meaning with the leadership races. And then we should have Neil should be calling in to be talking about his bylaw proposal, because that's kind of an important one, I think. So let's have him call and talk about that. In the meantime, while we wait for calls, let me take you through some of the big news this week. Let me start with this. I'm actually really interested in going. So I'm a state delegate. I'm kind of excited to go, actually, because this will be a really good opportunity to ask some of the elected officials some questions, right? And, you know, when you go to these conventions, it's basically you have full access. Most of your elected officials should be there because the delegates are kind of the ones that run the party. They're your most active voters. They're the ones who volunteer. They're the ones who donate to your campaigns. And so we are the constituency that they try to cater to in some ways. Then I'll say, like, once they get into office, they go and they tend to cater to their big donors. But at least at the convention, they'll humor us and pretend like they care. So there's an email that Troy Williams, and I've talked about this before, but, you know, I had this lawsuit against Equality Utah a couple of weeks ago. It got dismissed with a UPEPA motion. And so we'll see where that goes. I don't have any news on it. But what I thought was kind of notable is Troy Williams, who's the head of the left-wing, anti-family, pro-transing children Equality Utah, emailed my employer. And he said, "I'm disappointed I haven't received a response from you yet." This is to the head of HR at Lucid Software. "I wanted to give you a heads up that Goud's attacks, these are all social media posts. So I would say they are criticisms. You know, if you want to be a public organization promoting the sterilization and mutilation of children, you should be able to handle some criticism. But if you're Troy Williams, you're not capable of doing that." So he said, "I want to give you a heads up that Goud's attacks on Equality Utah Council member Amy Winder-Newton and the transgender community have escalated and will be hitting the press soon. KSL and the Salt Lake Tribune have both reached out to me for comment." Well, first off, they didn't reach out to him for comment. He totally set up those these hit pieces, right? Because the Tribune is essentially like a left-wing rag. It's a very low-quality newspaper that's essentially an arm of the Democrat Party, which is fine. You should just know that that's where their bias is. But what's kind of fascinating about this is he wrote this because I had proposed to censure Amy Winder-Newton for helping to raise $45,000 for Equality Utah. And Equality Utah would use that money then to go and defeat conservative Republicans in Utah, right? Kind of weird that we have an elected Republican, quote unquote Republican, helping a left-wing, anti-family, pro-transing kid Democrat group raise money. And what I find equally puzzling is that he was emailing my job about internal Republican affairs, because this censure was proposed at the state central committee. So this is internal Republican politics. It has nothing to do with Equality Utah or Troy Williams, but he's contacting my employer to complain about it. Jonah W. says, "Laughing my ass off. What WTF?" Seriously, WTF. Anyway, if I see Amy at the state convention, I plan on asking her about this. So I want to ask her, why was the head of left-wing, anti-family, pro-transgender children Equality Utah contacting my employer about internal Republican politics? That's my first question. I want to know if Amy asked him to contact them. That's my second question. Did she know about these contacts ahead of time? Did she know, right? Like, I want to know, did you talk to him ahead of time about this email? Now, on top of this, there's more to this, because that's not where this ended with Amy. And I just want you to keep in mind, when this is going on, I'm not an elected official. I'm just a grassroots guy. I ran for office in 2022 at the time. So, I had run for Salt Lake County clerk. So a lot of people knew me because there was quite the obsession with me. And I think if you understand Utah's political scene, it makes sense because I basically am everything that I think for the establishment of both parties, I create a problem. Oh, wait, hold on. Looks like Tracy's here. Okay, let me add her to the stream. Here we go. Let's see if this works. Hey, Tracy. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. This worked.
Woohoo!
Awesome. Okay. Okay. Are you a state delegate?
I am.
Okay. So tell us, what are you thinking heading into Saturday? Like, where are you leaning in terms of on the chairman's race? Where are you leaning on the secretary's race?
I'm definitely a Phil Lyman supporter. It's kind of been crazy. I don't know if you've been following it, but it's gotten crazy on social media, the complete meltdown if Phil Lyman gets in from the establishment. I think everybody's created these businesses out of collecting signatures and they make their money off it. So that's why they want to keep the status quo, and because they're making the money off it. But Phil Lyman, what it's done with these, when they've used these signature gatherers, it's just left us with the elections that are full of corruption. I mean, there was 11 people that were charged for election fraud, and then they were just dismissed down to a plea of abeyance. And so it is insane that Utah election has been left with full of corruption is what it is. And everybody wants to keep the status quo.
Yeah. Hey, so, President Trump endorsed Rob Axon, so the incumbent, over the weekend. What's your response to that?
I think he has the wrong people around him, and I think he's getting his info from Mike Lee, in my opinion. And Mike Lee, I actually have never really dug into some of his bills that he's passed, and I'm noticing that he is along the same avenues of what's going on in Utah. He heavily supports visas for people to come in, and I mean, he's attempted to pass bills that allows foreign investors to come in and purchase homes, and it's all about the developing, and he pushes the same policies that Utah is pushing here. So he wants to keep his position, and so if he gets Phil in, and I honestly believe Mike Lee knows that the signature process does not apply to the party. There's no way that if he studied it like I have, and him being an attorney, there's no way that he does not know that they are misapplying the law, that they're construing it to fit them to keep their preferred candidates in. And he's used signature gathering. So he knows that. So in my opinion, it's people like that. And I feel bad for Trump because he's getting really poor policy or really poor advice. And he talks about, the deep state, and well, the deep state's still telling you who to elect or who to nominate. So I kind of feel bad for him because he's getting bad info. I don't think he would. I think he would be a wholehearted Phil Lyman supporter if he actually got the truth.
Yeah, when I look, unfortunately, one of Trump's weaknesses is endorsements. He has empowered a lot of rhinos, and I don't know why, why that happens. It's unfortunate because they get into office all the time and then they undermine him.
Yep, exactly. And so I'm not a big fan of endorsements. Like, people ask me sometimes to endorse them, and even though I think they're great people, I'm not comfortable with endorsements because I don't think a candidate should base their run on an endorsement. I think they should be able to stand on their own merits, not on somebody's endorsement. I mean, and you could look at, and what I mean by that is like, what has Rob done? What can he stand on his own merits? Well, he didn't stand up for the delegates. I'll tell you that. And it's his duty. He should have said, no, you're not putting those people on our ballot. We don't need that ballot in the governor's race. We already have our nominee. We don't need it, so you cannot force those signature gatherers onto our ballot. And he didn't do that. And I gave him all the codes and the case law and everything to even help support him. And I've told him before, hey, I'll stand behind you. We need a strong chair. And no, he didn't want to, because he's a lobbyist and he doesn't want to tick off the status quo, because he needs to get his bills passed. He needs to get his agenda fulfilled to make his people that hire him happy. So of course he's going to choose not to help that.
Yeah, you know, the lobbyist thing is kind of interesting, because I know that it's actually if he calls in today, one of the questions I have is about that. Someone suggested it online. He officially registered as a lobbyist, I believe, earlier this year. But the question was, how long has he actually been engaged in lobbying but did not have to register? And I think that's a good question, because
that is a good question.
Yeah, because if you have to lobby these elected officials, it's very difficult then to criticize them, because they do not respond well to any criticisms at all. As anyone who has been engaged in any sort of lawmaking process knows, if you turn around and criticize these elected officials, that we have like the most thin-skinned, petulant elected official I've ever seen in my life. Like, they cannot take even just a little bit of criticism. It's so weird. But yeah, so I know that that's been an issue for you, right? Like the whole lobbying piece of this.
Yeah, sorry, you cut out for a little bit because I had someone call in and then I declined them and then I lost your audio. So I'm like, I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, I can move. Anyway, any thoughts on the secretary's race? That's another one that's big.
Yeah, that's another one that's big. And I support Olivia. She, to me, is one that is going to stand for the people. I haven't been on Stafford's, her town halls, but it just seems like she's part of the system too. Because like she was talking about raising money, the 2 million and the 3 million. There's inconsistencies in everybody's narrative, because she's saying, no, Rob didn't really raise 3 million. He only raised 2 million. So I'm like, there's inconsistent stuff going along, and we've got to change the status quo. We can't keep going. It's so odd to me that we keep electing the same people over and over and think that we're going to get different results. And it's just not going to happen. Okay.
Well, thank you for your input. I will see you on Saturday. I have Neil on the line next.
All right. So, thank you. See ya.
Yeah. Hey, Neil, how are you? Welcome to the show. Did I lose him? Call back, Neil. Well, I'll text him. Call back. We lost you. We lost you. Call back. Okay. Neil is going to call. Oh, he's back. Okay. He's going to talk about his proposal. Let's see what he got.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I just, so this Saturday I'm running a bio will help preserve the SCC for grassroots Republicans. So I wanted to just touch base and talk a little bit about it. I've sent out some emails in regards to it and got some phenomenal feedback. Really good, almost probably 98% positive feedback on it. But the bylaw, essentially what it's going to do is make it so that elected officials and lobbyists can't hold seats on the SCC. And some of the reasons why is ultimately it's a conflict of interest. And part of that conflict of interest is that as an elected official, you're beholden to your constituents, which even if you're a Republican elected official, you still have, Democrat constituents, you still have donors, and so we don't want to have people shaping the party from within that could potentially have that conflict of interest. Some of the arguments against have been that it is takes away the vote of the delegates, which is not true. Ultimately, it's something that is it's asking the delegates if they want to have elected officials on there. That's the whole purpose of the bylaw, is in the vote on convention, is to allow the delegates to pick that choice. And and then ultimately, we already have a number of elected officials on there just by the nature of their office per the Utah Constitution. The governor, the lieutenant governor, the AG, Speaker of the House, and then they already are elected officials that are holding those seats. And so there are a lot of us that just feel like those seats, other ones should be filled by non-elected officials.
Okay, so but what about people that say if the delegates don't want elected officials on the SCC, then they just shouldn't vote for them, and then so if they win those elections, then they should be able to sit on the SCC. How do you respond to that? Oh. How do you respond to that?
I guess like I say, sometimes the delegates, they get the opportunity to vet their candidates, and that's good. But if they're elected officials, then that conflict of interest is not necessarily always visible. So I think from a delegate's perspective, we don't always know what that looks like. So sometimes elected officials can be smooth talkers, and they can sound everything's wonderful, and ultimately it's something that they what we don't want is them amassing too much power, one individual. And so this is a good check and balance, just like the different branches of government. It's essentially saying, hey, the delegates saying we don't want them on there, and so let's just make that so that's a consistent.
That's actually a great point. So if what percentage of the vote does the bylaw have to get to pass?
I believe if it's just a bylaw, because essentially this is adding a bylaw, right? It's not an amendment. It's a new bylaw that would go into that section under membership for SCC. But it is, I believe it's a majority. I don't think that that bylaw would require 2/3. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, so I guess this would really be state delegates saying to county delegates, yeah, we appreciate that you sent some elected officials to the SCC, but we don't want that. And so it's like the state delegates basically governing the state party and saying, this is what we want this to look like, and kind of sending directions down to the county party, right? That's kind of,
and there's actually multiple counties that have already passed it on the county level. This very, very similar bylaws and so yes, it's kind of just saying, and Salt Lake County is one that it didn't get passed, but there's a lot of other counties in the state that believe that it should, and that's why they passed it at the county level, and so this just kind of makes it more unified across the state.
Okay. You have a comment from Jensen. He says, great bylaw proposal. So that's good.
Thanks.
Okay. If people have any questions, Neil, where can they reach you between now and Saturday?
My email is mano3781 @gmail. That's M as in Mary, A as in Nancy, or
Okay.
M as in Mary, A as in Apple, N as in Nancy, O as in Oscar, 3781 @gmail. And I'd love any questions, comments. Like I say, for the most part, out of all the email responses I've gotten, which has been a lot, they've almost all been in favor of. Did I lose you?
No, I'm here. Sorry about that. I got a call.
Okay.
I thought it was someone trying to comment, and it turns out it's like an army call.
No worries.
I will call you back. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Neil. Any thoughts on the leadership races that you want to share?
Obviously, I'm a Phil Lyman guy, so I like Rob. I think he's had a couple of years that he's done some good things, but some things I certainly don't agree with. And caucus and convention, they were just horrible. And there's got to be some ownership with the chair. As far as the secretary race, Olivia, in my opinion, is by far the better candidate. And in fact, some of the things, you're on the CC, or you were, and during that period of time, we literally, none of the information, the minutes were barely posted. I mean, they were up there, but there was a lot of gaps that didn't actually show the detail of the motions and the objections and some of the stuff that's really critical. And our website's been lacking a lot of information. And all of a sudden, a couple of weeks ago, boom, everything's up there. And now they're touting what a wonderful job they've done with the website. Well, it's been nothing for 2 years. And so I definitely feel like Olivia will be the better secretary. And as she did previously, she'll get that stuff up on the website.
Okay. Thanks for calling in. I'll see you Saturday.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Okay, if you want to call in, like I said, you can call 385-237-7960. That is my personal cell, and I will put you up to the mic. I don't know what's going on here. Okay. So let's continue with what I was talking about. Okay, so like I was saying earlier, if I get so my second piece that I want to I was talking about Amy Winder-Newton. I want to talk to her. By the way, sorry, I just got confirmation. Rob is going to call in, so we'll have Stafford on at 5:30. Chris was supposed to be on at 5:50, but he's not going to be able to make it anymore. Just he had a family issue, but he did send in a statement, so I'll read that for him. And then we'll have on Phil at 6:10, and we will have on Rob at 6:30. So that should be a good full show for everybody. What I was going to say, so this is the second thing I want to ask Amy about, and that is that she actually contacted and pressured the National Log Cabin Republicans to shut down the Utah Log Cabin Republicans that I ran. Now, she said she did this because I was doing off-brand messaging and bullying tactics. But by the way, so when this is all going on, I'm a private citizen. I exposed that she helped Equality Utah fundraise and raise $45,000 to help defeat Republicans. That's what that money, for their PAC, I'm sorry. She helped their PAC raise money. That money will be used to go and defeat conservative Republicans who oppose their very evil transing agenda. That's what Equality Utah pushes in Utah. So she went up to these national guys. They wouldn't give me more information about it. They put out this like salacious statement saying I did, like suggesting that I did something. And I was like, it was totally out of the blue. We were all shocked by it, my leadership team. And when they dissolved us, come to find out, it's because of elected officials in Utah. And the question I have is, first of all, like, why did you, this is like, and just to put some background on this, Amy is a product of nepotism. So this is not someone who actually got to where she is based on her own talent. before she got into politics, she used to go by Amy Newton. She didn't use the Winder name. She only started using that when she entered politics. And before she entered politics, she was really a nobody. She was basically, I think the most notable thing she did is she wrote this piece under her brother's fake name, his pseudonym that he was using to write pieces to fluff himself up. So it was called Richard Burwash was the name of it. Her brother's name is Mike Winder, and he was in elected office and writing these pieces in the newspaper under the name Richard Burwash to fluff himself to the public, saying how great he was, but people didn't realize that Richard Burwash was actually him. She wrote one of those pieces. That's her main claim to fame is Amy Newton. So then she adds the Winder name to run for office because she's capitalizing on her grandfather's good name, but really selling it because she is no talent, no real latent talent, unless being the governor's hitman in Utah is a talent. And she has a few rounds of this with different people. She accused Dave Robinson, who is a gay Republican and was volunteering for the Salt Lake County Republican Party, of sexually harassing her. And I actually don't think that it's even a true story. I was digging into it and I couldn't find any corroborating evidence that there was actual sexual harassment. And just, let me just add, if a gay guy is, it's hard for me to believe a gay guy would sexually harass a woman. Just no offense to the women out there, but as someone who is gay, I don't have the energy for that. And I don't think many gay guys do. Not worth it. Straight guys, yeah, they might actually think it's worth it. Gay guys are not trying to harass women. So there's that. Then with Sylvia Mira Fisk, Amy filed a totally frivolous lawsuit against her. Sylvia filed what's called a UPEPA motion in response because what Amy did is actually completely she was targeting Sylvia for her political viewpoints and because she was about to run for governor. The court, I think, flubbed that whole decision. I appealed it for Sylvia. I filed a request for writ for certiorari with the Utah Supreme Court. We got past kind of the initial phase. Like the court thought there was some merit. They required the other side to file a response. We did a reply brief, and then they decided not to take it. But the decision they made was wrong. They basically what do we have a call yet? Oh, not yet. Okay, I'm waiting for a staffer here. I'm trying to keep track of time. Anyway, she basically caused Sylvia to incur essentially $80,000 of attorney fee debt. I'm not really trying to collect whatever I had to charge her, but there's another law firm that helped her. That's a different story. And I did it more out of I'm a friend, so to help out. And then with me, she did this. She went after I believe she was actually involved with Troy Williams going after my employment. And then she pressured the National Log Cabin Republicans to shut down the local conservative Republican group. And so my question here is has Amy ever gone to the Equality Utah's national parent and asked them to shut down Equality Utah? Or does she only try to shut down conservative gays, right? Like we're the problem, not they don't have an issue with liberal gays, which will make you ask the question why they don't. I also want to ask her, one of her sons, I think she has more than one son. He got a Governor's Honors Academy scholarship, is my understanding. And I'd like to know how he got that. Was it actual talent? I'm guessing no. Or is it connections? Because there's multiple elected officials, kids who have gotten these scholarships. I think Disagree Butter actually broke this news a while ago, but it was 3 of Governor Cox's kids got it. I think he has 3 sons maybe. And then Mike McKell's son got it. Amy Winder Newton, one of her sons, got it. Essentially, they've turned the scholarship program into a slush fund for the children of elected officials. It must be nice to have an elected official as a parent. I wouldn't know. I actually had to work to get ahead. I got a scholarship to go to undergrad and didn't have to pay anything. And then I paid for my own law school, meaning I took out student loans. But unlike some of the like people like Sarah Reel, I have actually paid my own student loans back. It's like kind of like novel, I know. Okay, we got Jonah W says John D. Johnson has been running so much cover for Axon over the weekend. It's insane. This, I will say, these races are hot. They're so fascinating. You can just see, oh, let's see. Hold on, I got an email here. Still good. Oh, let me call. Okay. I don't know why she's getting a busy signal. Let me call Stafford. All right, let's see. Let's just gonna try again. Oh, I don't think I get, hold on. Okay, give me a second, guys. It looks like she's having trouble getting on, so let me figure this out. 801 203 0824. Okay. Let me put on my speaker. That don't work. Fix. Hold on. Try again. I just tried to call you, but it won't. Okay, let's see. It worked a couple minutes ago. Let's see here. Come on. Boom, boom, boom. Let's try this. It's very weird. Oh, sorry. There you go. I thought I sent her a video link. I'm very sorry, Stafford. Let me, hold on. When I have to run the show on my own, this is very difficult. I just want you all to know that. Let me try to call her and just tell her to send her the video link. I feel kind of bad. Hey, Stafford. Hey, I just sent you the video link. So you should be able to link it. Sorry about that. Okay. We'll see you in a minute. Bye. Okay, that was my technical error. She should be on in a minute. This is very exciting. Let's see what we got for her. And if you guys want to call in, you just got to call my cell. Or I wonder if I could actually post. I don't want to post the video link thing because then I know what'll happen. Someone's going to like photo. They'll do that weird thing where they call in and then they start showing porn on your video feed. And I would not know how to turn that off. So we're not doing that. Like last year, I remember I went on this call. It was run by Utah Tech leads, and they kept getting. It was like so bad. These people kept calling in, and it was just started to like this woman, Sunny Washington, another person who contacted my employer. She kept she'd be talking, and then someone like suddenly the screen would be taken over, and it'd be poured. Oh, so embarrassing, man. You just like on one level you feel bad for them, right? Because you're like, God, that is so embarrassing. But then on another level, you just have to laugh because maybe it's deserved. Okay, as we wait for Stafford here, hopefully she'll call me. Okay, let me talk about my next topic here. I think we got some big news this week. It was yesterday, actually. I'll tell you, with Trump in office, it is just like good news 24/7, right? Like the guy is just on fire. I think the big issue is where is the Republican Congress and why do we even bother to elect them? Like they're so useless. This executive order that he issued, and I think he just signed it this morning, is huge on drug prices. Let me put this up. Oh, I think we got her. Hold on. Oh, yep, we got her. Okay, so Stafford is here. Let me get her on. We'll come back to the EO. Okay. Hey, Stafford.
Hi. How are you?
Welcome to the show. Sorry about the technical difficulty there, or whatever.
That's okay. I kept getting a busy signal when I tried to call in, so I was getting a little bit worried that you were giving me the cold shoulder.
No. Usually you'd be able to call in on the number, but my producer isn't here today, so there's no call screener. That's why I thought I sent you the video link, so I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. No worries. I like your hat.
Oh, thanks. Is that your house?
Yes.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, we bought a log house in Morgan County, so it's a little work. It's a little different from living in a normal house, but yes, we love it. So also none of our furniture went with the house, so we've been slowly having to search Facebook Marketplace. But yeah,
very cool. And you had a baby recently, right?
I did in December. I did.
Okay.
He is 5 months today.
Wow! Oh, congrats! That's awesome.
Yeah. He's the best. He's as my husband says, he gives away lots of free smiles. If I turn around for 2 seconds, I was at Costco on Saturday, and I turned around for 2 seconds, and he was flirting with some lady who was standing on the aisle next to me, just giggling and googling at her. So anyway, yes, he's the best.
Okay, so we can talk about the secretary's race. I'll just say, I think this is a really interesting race because it is a rematch between you and Olivia. And so listeners know you are the current incumbent secretary. Maybe you want to tell us about your background as it relates to the secretary's position.
Sure. So I ran for secretary 2 years ago, and I defeated the woman who's challenging me now, Olivia. My career actually started on the public sector side. I actually worked in the administration of Governor Bobby Jindal before I moved to Utah. I'm a transplant to Utah. I told a little bit of this story at convention 2 years ago, how Utah won me over. I'm a convert, a Utah convert, if you will. And then starting in 2016, when Governor Jindal left office, I've been in the private sector. I started out at a Fortune 500 engineering company where I was doing M&A, mergers and acquisitions, support work. So I was helping integrate a company that company had purchased. And then I started my own consulting business in 2018. And I started out doing strategy and product strategy. So on the technology side, I wound up selling that business to a dev shop and becoming the CEO of the merged entity. So I ran a technology services business for about 2 years. And then I exited that in 2023 and started an M&A exit planning and integrations business called Fidens, which means fearless in Latin. So I work with a lot of small business owners here in Utah and to some extent in other places, big buyers of small businesses, and I help them integrate. And then I also work with owners to help them plan selling their business or transitioning it to the next generation.
Very cool. And so why are you running for re-election for secretary?
Yeah, so we did a lot of work over the last 2 years. When I ran 2 years ago, my goal was to build the infrastructure of the party. The secretary is sort of like the chief administrative officer of the party. So there are some specific things that are laid out in the bylaws that the secretary has to do: minutes, attendance, votes, data. But there's so much more, because ultimately, if we just do the basics, we're not going to win. We can have the most beautiful minutes for the SEC meetings in the entire world. In fact, I could professionally lay them out and we would lose elections, because that's not what wins elections ultimately. So we've been doing all of those things, and I wanted to do more. So I went through all the bylaws and I proposed over 20 changes to the bylaws. And some of those have gotten through the SEC and some of them haven't. One of the constitutional amendments that I proposed is actually on the agenda for convention, being sponsored by Lisa Sandberg. And that one is about changing our fiscal year. But there's more that I'm going to bring those back to a future meeting. We're going to do them in smaller chunks, because I do think that cleaning up our bylaws is important and making sure that it helps with the transition from one administration, one leadership team to the next. I also rewrote our operations manual to help with that exact problem as well. We now have software for candidates. We've redone the website. So there's a lot of stuff that got done over the last 2 years above and beyond what the bylaws require the secretary to do. And I did that because I want to win elections. In the end of the day, the Republican Party here is here to recruit really strong conservative Republican candidates and help them win. And I think a lot of the things we've done for the last 2 years have helped with that. However, now that we are, in my view, sort of back to zero from an infrastructure standpoint, there's so much more we could do. So I want to bring some of those bylaw proposals back. I also want to create a authenticated section of the website. So websites are public, obviously. And we could create a logged in section of the website where we could put more specific training and content for SEC members, for candidates, for delegates, that we wouldn't want our opposition being able to see. If I put something up on the website, anybody can see it, including in China. So,
Yes.
we have to be careful what we publicize on the website. I also want to increase communication and connectivity with the counties. So something we've been working on is a county handbook, just to help with, again, the sort of like total recall every 2 years. So we get, and that happens at the state level and the county level, but to help the county leadership kind of know what are the basic things that they're supposed to be doing. But something that I've had a number of delegates ask me about is, how do I make sure that my contact information is up to date? Sometimes they don't know who their precinct chair is. They don't know how to contact them. Some of the counties have got websites, some of them don't. Some of them have Facebook pages. And the state party, just as a conduit, could help with getting delegates in touch with their county parties to get their information updated. We don't want to put everybody's contact information up there publicly again, because we don't want bad actors spamming our county chairs, for example. However, we could create a form, or we could create an email forwarding service where if you email us, then it sends it to the right person at the county level to make sure your information gets updated. These are sort of like brass tacks level things that I think would improve the experience of our delegates, and also would improve our ability to win elections. So that's just a couple of my ideas. And I've been soliciting more ideas on my Zoom calls that I've been having. So I've got one more Zoom call tomorrow at 6. But I love ideas. So I would encourage all of your listeners to send me more ideas if they have any about things that we could do to improve our processes and our operations.
Okay. Have you gotten any, is there like one idea that's come out of the Zoom calls that has kind of struck you as something you want to take up as a second term initiative?
Yeah, so that one that I just mentioned was actually an idea that came up on Friday. There was a delegate who actually was in Davis County, where Olivia has been the secretary for the last year and a half-ish. And his information was wrong for a really long time. And he didn't know who to contact. And he finally did get in contact with his county party. And for whatever reason, it never got updated. It never got sent to us. And so he wasn't getting our emails. He went and registered on our website, is my understanding, so that he was directly in our system. But there's just an information gap there. And for the caucus and convention system to function, we have to have delegates who know how to participate. And we need to be able to give their information to candidates. Otherwise, the whole thing falls apart. And I think the state party can provide the connectivity there. So. Yeah.
What do you see as kind of the distinctions between you and Olivia in terms of this race and sitting and being secretary of the party?
Yeah. So I think it's a couple things. I think in part my record speaks for itself. I went above and beyond what is required of the role. I did the role. I sent out the minutes. I took the attendance and votes. It's up on the website. Everything is transparent. It is accurate. I have, done what is required of me in the bylaws, but I've also gone way beyond that with a number of special projects. I'm a busy person. I run my own company. I had a baby, but I actually had a delegate at the Utah County Convention say to me, he's like, you remind me of that adage that you have to, if you want to get something done, you have to ask somebody who's busy. Just true. It's a sad thing. Busy people tend to find the time, and I found the time to do a lot of these projects. But I also think that it's important to just compare our backgrounds. I've run a technology company. When we were redoing the state party's logo and some of the website improvements that we've made, we got multiple bids for all of those things to make sure we were being price efficient and also getting highest quality. I have written those contracts, so I know where all the dirty laundry is in the legalese at the end. I know how to structure those contracts. I know what a good going rate is. So I think we got a really good price. And so those are things where, I just have the experience and Olivia doesn't. And that's not a knock against Olivia. I think it's just what we need at this moment for the party is my background. And I've been, committing that time to make sure that we can have the strongest party possible.
Okay. Are there any lessons that you learned from the first term? Maybe a mistake that happened, something you realized that you're going to change in the second term. It's kind of like a lesson learned.
Yeah, sure. So I think there's one sort of small thing that comes to mind, which is simply how to work smarter, not harder. So there's a lot of data that the secretary has to keep updated. We, in the middle of our term, transitioned to a new database. So we've moved a lot of things out of spreadsheets, which has been helpful. But with the attendance and votes, for example, pulling all that information into one spreadsheet, I was using actually Olivia's template, which I like. It's a Google Sheet. It was the primary way that we were capturing all of this. It has this kind of bulky header at the top, and I added some filters to it, but you couldn't really just copy and paste all the content into it. So it was just like a silly thing. It took me like 45 minutes to update it instead of like 5 minutes. So there are some, things where I just want to take processes that we should not have to recreate the wheel and spend a lot of time formatting to get because the whole point is to get the information out as fast as possible, to be as transparent as possible. So I think there's some small things. I wish I had done that faster. I waited until a year in to start really fiddling with some of those things and trying to get better ways to get that information done faster. I think the second thing is just making sure that we have really good communication plans around how we roll out anything, whether it's caucus, whether it's convention. We spent a bunch of time actually thinking through this in the ops manual. I want to add some additional content to the ops manual. So I was the communications co-chair for convention in 2022. So this is before I ran. And so there is a sort of a series of emails that you should send out. Some of it is about, the booth draw and like different things that need to happen for candidates. And then there's a series of things that need to be communicated to delegates. And there's a series of things you need to, talk to the space about. So whatever venue you're at, there's just a series of things that need to happen. And it's not rocket science. And so I think templating out some of those emails, we now have a pretty stable, and we switched email vendors as well, but we have a lot of those templates now in there. I want to develop more of those templates. But again, these are just things where we were running so fast. We got elected and then boom, we had the CD2 special. So, I mean, it was just, we were just kind of having to go really fast all the time. And then of course we had presidential and we had to have the election of the national delegates. So I think there's some of this. Now we're going into an election year that's a little bit less high profile. We don't have a gubernatorial election. We don't have an open Senate seat where we can, again, put in some of these building blocks, because the thing is, the party is a functional enterprise that is supposed to be working for Republicans. And it's not just sort of like you get elected and cool, now I'm the secretary and I'm going to, take credit for it and do nothing. Like, that's not how this works. And so, if we don't build this infrastructure, then in 2 years from now, we're just going to have total recall all over again. And it's just like, literally, we just like start again every 2 years. It's crazy. And I think there are some just basic things that we can put in place that will benefit this year, will benefit 2 years from now. And, the successor after that and the successor after that, I'm not going to be the secretary forever. And I want to make sure that whoever takes on this role in the future is just not starting from scratch over and over and over again, which is what has been happening in the recent past. So.
Okay. So in addition to this, I think it's actually really interesting that there are 2 people running for secretary and 2 people running for chair. And so maybe let me ask you about this first. Why do you think there are 2 people running for secretary? Is there something about the position that makes it really important that maybe people don't understand?
Yeah. So to be honest with you, I am not really sure why Olivia filed the run against me. I have heard some of her, I guess, explanation at different candidate events. And all of her explanation is either not true, I guess, or like, I don't understand it, or is based on something where it was a technical issue that she has like turned into a scandal that I don't think is a scandal. I'll just give you one small example. So something I've heard her say is that she thinks that I don't have control of credentialing at the SEC because I've delegated it to the interns. The nugget or the kernel of truth that this came from is that she emailed me this spring I don't know, I was like 2 months postpartum maybe, asking for the attendance and votes spreadsheet. And I went the way that we now do credentialing at the SEC because of the consent vote. So just for everybody's explanation here, we used to just credential people when they showed up at the meeting, and they were, and then if you moved from being in person to online or online to in person, we would document that. But if you showed up in person, you were counted as in person. Over the course of the last 2 years, we passed a bylaw called the consent, that it created something called consent votes. And basically what that means is that we can approve something with unanimous consent of the room if I think it's fewer than 10 people or fewer than 15 people object to it or something like that. And what that means, however, is that we need to know who's in the room all the time, because if you're not going to consent to something if you're not there. And so what that meant is that we need to actually track when people leave or when they come back. So we had to use a different system that was sort of like a time-stamped, instead of a spreadsheet, a time-stamped system to do that. So anyway, we started using ClickUp to do that. And at some point, while I was having a baby, we onboarded a new intern. We have 5 licenses or something like that. That's like the tier we pay for or whatever. And we gave my license to an intern. It was an accident. And I only told Olivia this because I wanted her to not feel like I was ignoring her. Then I'm like, I'm so sorry. It's going to take me an extra couple days. I got to go get my license back. I didn't realize I'd lost access to ClickUp. And anyway, and now it's like turned into this scandal. And I don't understand why it's turned into a scandal, because clearly it's like, it was a technical error where like we just gave my license to an intern and he had it for like a week, and then I got it back and we gave someone else's license to the intern. Anyway, in regards to what the secretary does, it is an important role, and I do think that Olivia's, her heart's in the right place in the sense of like wanting to have a role that is impactful for the party. So the secretary and the chair are actually the only 2 roles that must be at every SEC meeting, and in fact, we actually have to be in the same place. So we had an SEC meeting last fall where Rob decided to have multiple locations so that people could go door knocking out afterwards. And even though there was a location closer to my house in Morgan, I drove down to Bluffdale because Rob and I have to be in the same room. And so that's Robert's rule.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So because the secretary is taking minutes and is the official, record keeper of the meeting, the secretary has to be there and the chair has to be there. In fact, I can't miss a meeting and Rob can't miss it. Like, we can't have a meeting without the 2 of us. If the vice chair is, called in on Zoom, or if the treasurer is not there, like those things are allowed, but we can't have a meeting without me and Rob, or without the secretary and the chair. So it is an important role, and both under Robert's rules and under our bylaws. The treasurer has some specific things articulated in the bylaws as well. The secretary does. The vice chair just says that the vice chair, helps with whatever the chair, directs the vice chair to help with. But yes, to answer your question, the secretary's role is actually quite important to the party, which is why, we have to have SEC meetings with both of us there in person at every meeting. So.
Okay. So final kind of question here is, will you be able to work with either Rob or Phil, since I don't think we have a sense of who's going to win the chair race at this point?
Yeah, I know Rob better. So, I don't know Phil as well. I have started to get to know him. I've had some nice conversations with him. But I believe that the one of the important things about any of these roles is that you have to be able to work with whoever is the chair. That has not always been the case. We have had leadership in the past where the chair has made a decision and someone else in the leadership team has disagreed with that decision and has in fact acted counter to the decision of the chair. And I think it's actually, yes, we need to uphold the bylaws, but in the end of the day, the chair is the boss and the buck stops with the chair. So I don't think it's appropriate that anyone on the leadership team is undermining the chair. And, if you disagree with the chair, you should vote him out the next time around. Right. That's so ultimately, I don't know what's going to happen. But I do approach this with a sense of professionalism that I'm going to do my job.
Okay. Well, between now and Saturday, where can people reach you? I know you said you have a Zoom call tomorrow night.
I do.
Right? Okay.
Yep. So I have a Zoom call tomorrow night at 6. You can also email me at stafford@electstafford.com. So that's just my first name. It's phonetic, like the loan, the federal Stafford loan, if you're wondering how to spell it. I'm also going to be at the Tooele County Convention on Thursday. I will have a booth. You can come visit me there. And then I will also have a booth on Saturday morning, starting at bright and early at 7:30. My booth always has the best snacks. So if you want something substantive with fiber and protein, I recommend coming to my booth. Others will have sugar, but you know how that makes you feel, right? So come get the healthy snacks at my booth. And I'd love to have you come meet me in person.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good luck on Saturday. We appreciate you calling
All right.
in.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thanks, Stafford.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye. Okay, let's see here. Oh, okay. Well, so I hope that was helpful to people. Again, if y'all have comments or questions, you can call in. You can have to call my cell phone. Like I said, it's 385-237-7960. Okay, so let me see here. Well, we should have Phil on at 6:10. Sorry, my eye is watering like crazy. Okay. I thought that was really informative, and I hope people found that useful. And I would totally recommend going and getting snacks. I will say, I do think at a convention, food is key, and she is correct that typically people give sugary snacks. Personally, when I've had booths, I've always had cookies there, so I am guilty of that myself. But that is because I would usually eat my breakfast not at the booth. But if you're there at 7:30, that's pretty early. So I guess, you can go get a snack from Stafford. I wonder what she'll have. That sounds good. Okay, so here we go. This is what I was talking about before Stafford called in. This is actually a really significant executive order by the president. This shows you about how he's really with the people, right? This is another one of these 80-20, 90-10 issues. And what it does is it means that now American consumers, and really we're talking about middle and working class Americans, for years, we've been subsidizing drugs for the rest of the world. So what the drug companies do is they overcharge us for their drugs, and then they go and charge a fraction of that to the Europeans, and the way to do this is to compare to comparable countries, because like they might go to a place like India, let's say, and they might charge them way less. I actually don't really support that. I think drug prices should be across the board. They should be the same for everybody. Okay, like but I get like people may say, well, like a country like India has, like 600 million people that don't have electricity, so maybe they should pay less for drugs. Okay, maybe there's an argument for that. Neil says, hopefully she'll have steaks. I think that's a reference to the Phil Lyman thing. Okay, where Governor Cox gave the two Lymans a steak dinner. Although steaks will be great, I love steak. Okay. Anyway, so this will bring it so that we would be paying the most favored nation rate, which is the rate that these Europeans and Japanese are paying, for example. In one of the examples, I'm not going to play the video because I have the whole issue where videos don't work on my computer. There was, Trump was talking about Ozempic. I just want to add that I do not encourage anybody to take Ozempic. I've read about some of the side effects from it. I do not think they're good. If you are a man, it can affect your ability to, perform. I'll say that. And, I don't think anybody wants that. Certainly it would suck to lose weight and then not be able to, perform as you want to with your significant other. And so what I would say, though, is so for the Ozempic example, Trump was talking about how one of his friends, it was a pretty funny clip because he talks about his wealthy friend that lives in New York and is taking the fat shot. And then Trump says it's not working to him, which is kind of amazing. And that's typically the types of conversations you'll hear between guys. But the guy said in New York City, Ozempic costs $1,300 a shot. And in London, it costs $88. So the question is, what what accounts for that difference in price, right? Besides corruption. And I would say it's corruption. That's what accounts for the difference in the price. Our politicians are very much bought off by big pharma, and they do their bidding. There's no reason why we should be paying, this is like 13 times or 14 times what someone in London is paying when England can afford to pay the exact same rates that Americans pay. And so what they've been doing for years is they've been using the American working and middle class to subsidize the entire world when it comes to drug prices. This is a huge executive order. I would expect, I'm sure that there is some Democrat appointed district court judge who will try to stay it, but they'll have to go through the process to figure out how to get this implemented. I will say part of what was notable is during the press conference, RFK Jr. said that actually Trump's campaign got $100 million in donations from big pharma. He's still doing this. This hurts big pharma, this executive order. And that should tell you something. For $100 million, Trump could not be bought. That's pretty impressive. In Utah, we have politicians that I know of who can be bought for $500. One of them being Amy Winder Newton. She told someone that for a donor who gave her $500, she was very concerned about what that person wanted. So you can kind of see like the difference in integrity, right? We got a president, this guy, I mean, for all this stuff that the left and the establishment say about him, he is delivering for the American people. Now, I think the question is, where is Congress? Where are they? What is the point of having a Republican majority Congress if they are not implementing President Trump's policies? Because the reality is that every single executive order he has put into effect will be reversed by the next Democrat president. And so we need a Congress that's actually going to do its job. And so I would encourage all of you that if you see anybody from our congressional delegation at the Utah State Convention on Saturday, go and ask them if they support this executive order and if they are going to bring it up for a vote in Congress or in the Senate, depending on where they are. If they say no or they equivocate, you will know who they actually represent. And it's not you. It is 100% not you. Okay, so anyway, I was thrilled by this order. I mean, I can't even tell you. And there's Democrats actually who have come out and said that they want to pass this into law. So you have like Bernie Sanders now, who is like a weird, oddly rich socialist or whatever with multiple homes and millions of dollars, even though he's never had a real job. But he wants to pass it into law, which should tell you that, like I said, 80-20 issue, 90-10 issue maybe. Okay, let's see here. The next one I had while we wait for Phil was, by the way, if I can see your comments. So if anybody has questions you want to ask Phil or Rob, feel free to, enter them in the comments and I'll ask them for you. When they're on, it'll be hard for you to call my cell phone because I'm not going to pick up when I'm interviewing someone, right? It's kind of awkward. So let's see here. This is the next thing I was going to talk about. There was this, I just want to talk about this guy. I thought this was interesting. In Florida, the Attorney General is actually suing, I think it's 24-Hour Fitness or Planet Fitness, because they let men into women's locker rooms there. And the reason I want to talk about this, I'm having trouble. I'm using my my arm with the fractured elbow to try to move my thing. Like I said, I don't think this is going to play. I'll just show you this. But the Attorney General, they got this new Attorney General. And, oh, that's right. Because didn't the old one become like the senator or something? So he's suing, it's Lifetime Fitness for allowing men to use women's locker rooms. And he's doing it. So this is a private company, right? And they're letting men use women's locker rooms. And the Attorney General is suing them under their Civil Rights Act. Golden, beautiful, wonderful. Okay. the reason I wanted to bring this up is that this is a huge issue, right? Like this men going into women's locker rooms and bathrooms for some bizarre reason. We have a lot of these mentally ill transgenders people that want to go and use the bathroom with women. And for those of you who think it's something innocent and that they just have a mental health problem that they're dealing with, that's not actually it. They get sexually aroused by sharing a locker room with you. That's the whole point. So I want to show you kind of the difference between a Florida Republican and we got Phil. So we'll come back to this. Hold on. Let me stop sharing so we're not distracting. Okay, I'm adding Phil.
Zoom this in just a little bit.
Okay. Hey Phil, how are you?
I'm good. Goud, how are you doing?
Good. Well, thank you for coming on today.
No, thank you. Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late.
It's okay. We'll forgive you. Do you want to start by talking about why you're running for state chair?
Yeah. I think in Utah right now, we're really looking at a decision as to whether or not we're going to take on things like election integrity, obfuscation from the lieutenant governor's office, taking on those signatures, things like that. So much of those things that we should have taken on during 2024. And we say that we're all about election integrity, but when the opportunity comes, we don't stand up. I've kind of been going back and forth this week, looking at times of, peace when things are going good and times of conflict. And I think I'm more designed for conflict. And if people believe, I guess, in the state that there is no conflict, that everything's fine, that the powers that be are doing a good job, then they're not going to be inclined to vote for me. But if they truly want to see something change in the GOP, if they truly want to see the GOP stand up and basically flex our muscle as a party and exercise our influence, whether it be over the legislature or over the candidates, over the elections, over the lieutenant governor's office, then I think this is an opportunity to do it. What brought me to running for the GOP was honestly watching the GOP do nothing on the 2024 election.
All right. And are you talking about the issue with the signature gathering, or is there more to it than that?
The signature gathering, the primary election itself, the convention process, our bylaws are very clear that if you get over 60%, you go straight to the general, and we can say, SB 54 changed that, and now you have to go to a primary. But the truth is that's never been actually tested in a primary election until this year, and especially not with a governor's race. So there was only one person gathering signatures, and only one person came out of convention. So it was the perfect showdown of who wins the primary election. People like to think that the primary election is something that takes place after the convention. The truth is, in the Republican Party, is the convention is a big part of the primary election. And when you get 60%, you go straight to the general ballot. And it's funny because Spencer Cox said that exact same thing, in an interview prior to this. You get above 60%, you go straight to the general ballot, no questions asked, period, end of story.
Okay. So over the weekend, there was big news that President Trump endorsed your opponent. And do you have what's your response to that?
A couple of things. I think the endorsement was fairly generic, but at the same time, I know Rob did a lot for campaigning for President Trump in Arizona and Nevada, and so I guess if anyone's deserving of kind of a nod from President Trump, it's probably Rob Axon. It doesn't bother me. I'm not campaigning to the President Trump. I'm campaigning to the state delegates, and I have huge respect for Donald Trump. I watch what he's doing. He's got my full support. But the endorsement of Rob Axon, I don't believe has a tremendous amount of weight with the state delegates. And I guess we'll find out. Again, it comes back to this idea of kind of the establishment and whether they want somebody who's going to stand up to that establishment. So the endorsement, if the endorsement had come from me, it would have probably changed my trajectory a little bit as kind of the anti-establishment. And I think it reinforces Rob's as the establishment.
All right. Just like a background question on that. Were you interviewed to be considered for the endorsement? And I guess I'm wondering if there was a process that happened for this, or was it this out of the blue?
I mean, I was certainly not approached or interviewed or talked to about it. I don't know if Rob went through anything more than that. He, former staffer for Mike Lee, and I suspect it was a product of that relationship.
Okay. So one issue that keeps coming up is your ability to fundraise compared to Rob's ability. And can you talk about that and your thoughts on your ability to fundraise if you win the chair?
Well, I wonder in the GOP what the purpose of the fundraising is. And I know there's lots of things that we need to spend money on. What I've said is we can never let the things that matter most be at the mercy of things that matter least. And the things that matter most for the GOP chair to me, is the apparatus, the election apparatus. Are we interfacing with the lieutenant governor's office? Are we forcing them to follow their own rules and their own laws? Is it an open and fair election, or have we allowed something that could just be stolen right out from under us? If we've created a system that can be stolen right out from under the GOP, but we go out and we raise a bunch of money to campaign for Donald Trump in other states, then I don't see that we're really serving our purposes. That said, what I've noticed is people who don't have money talk a lot about money. People who have money see it as a tool. I raised more money than any non-incumbent governor in the history of the state of Utah. Ran a very effective race. I've got people who are excited, and what I've told people, I didn't go out and ask for money. They saw what we were doing, and people were genuinely contacting us saying, "How can I be a part of this? How can I help? How can I donate?" I guarantee the same thing would happen with the GOP if they start standing up for the platform and the Constitution and the bylaws of the GOP. You would have people that would be stepping up. The other thing, we've got some big donors to the GOP, and Rob will say, there's no strings attached, but there are expectations. Those donors have expectations, and you can see it because it plays out in the Olympics and the arenas and the different things that are given to them. So these same people that try to buy the party are also buying the legislature, and they're just exercising way too much influence. I'd rather have $10 from 100,000 people than $100,000 from 10 people. And it seems like that's it's ironic to me that people criticize me. I work in the money space a lot with some pretty heavy hitters financially. I think I know what they want from a GOP, and it is not what they've got now. They don't want to go up head to head with, Gail Miller or Ryan Smith if their views are different than theirs. So they just stay away from the GOP right now.
Okay, so can you you're kind of talking about, it sounds like there'll be a difference if you're chair versus if Rob is reelected. Maybe can you talk about that more and maybe give us a specific example of how you would have handled something differently than it was handled by Rob?
For me, the most, I guess maybe the lowest hanging fruit is the signature verification. We as a party selected a candidate. This isn't about me, but it's about the candidate that we selected at the convention. We could throw Trent Staggs into that as well, but on the GOP candidate, we selected a candidate, and that was our Republican primary candidate. Yet we didn't even make the attempt to verify the signatures of the other individual, Governor Cox, who claimed to have qualified for the primary ballot by collecting signatures. And it would be one thing if there was not an alarm raised, but I raised the alarm in March that I didn't think he had his signatures. And the reason I said it is because we asked to view them and we were denied, when in the past that would have always been permitted. So if I were the GOP chair, I would have insisted that we be allowed to examine the packets, the signature packets, and to do it immediately. It's not the lieutenant governor's primary race. It is our primary race. The same thing would have been true about viewing the voter rolls. Again, it's the Republican primary. Those are our voters. That's our voter rolls. It's really the party's election when we're talking about the primary. And so all the way across it. And then the actual results of the election. So I would have taken a really strong stand on the primary election to say, okay, if this is going to be the Republican candidate that goes forward from the Republican primary, we're going to make sure that they've complied with the rules.
Okay. I think one of the claims I'm hearing out there is that you are running to tear down the party and divide it. And so how would you address that criticism?
Yeah, nothing could be further from the truth. I'm a lifelong Republican. I like the platform. I believe that we're losing our conservative base. It's funny in the legislature. I've been in the legislature the last 6 years, and we had a couple of trainings, and they came and literally said, based on the survey results, we show that Utah prefers more of a Mitt Romney type candidate and less of a Mike Lee type candidate for the Republicans. And then they showed a bunch of interviews from the I think it was the Republican Women's Organization, which at the time was who was it that was heading that up? Anyway, it's a very left leaning type of a organization to go and then put that out as though it were the general feeling of the Republican Party. And what I had said then is, we're not losing people in the middle of the party. We're losing the people who are our base, the conservatives. And if we move too far to the left, we're going to find ourselves without a base. And besides that, the platform is the contract that we sign when we say we want to be a member of the Republican Party. So I don't like the word so much about unity. I like the word affinity. Affinity to me says more than unity. It says I'll defend you. I'll fight for you. I'm loyal to you. I want people who are loyal to the Republican Party, whether they agree with me or whether we agree with each other. We are loyal to a party. Unity has this idea that we all are thinking the same. We're all pushing the same direction. I think if we focus on the platform, it would be the opposite of division. It would be truly loyal to the Republican Party and the principles that we stand for.
Yeah, and another kind of concern I've heard out there is whether you'll be able to work with legislators to get, I guess, bills passed that may be beneficial to the party or maybe that conform to the party platform.
Yeah.
Do you have any concerns about your ability to work with our legislature?
I mean, it's funny because I read some of the comments that show the people, the main ones that are criticizing me, that you can tell they don't even understand how the legislature works. They don't understand what the process is of running bills. There were many, many times in the legislature that, you disagree with a person's bill, but you really like that person. It doesn't mean you vote for their bill. It means you still really like that person. You go back and you talk with them. There are some legislators, granted, who want to turn it personal and create animosity and feelings. And those people are hard to work with. The vast majority of the legislators are friends of mine. I know them. I know what pressures they're under. I know how to talk to them. I know how to, push things through the legislature. And the idea that they wouldn't work with me because somehow they don't like me is a really strange concept. I will say too that, people want to say that resistance is a bad thing. Without resistance in our system, government just goes unrestrained over the cliff. So only a despot would say that resistance is equivalent to division or to something negative. To me, resistance is a really good thing, and different opinions and different ideas and different approaches are what make the Republican Party strong. So working with the legislators, I would look forward to that. When I left, I told them all, that I love them. I care about their families. I care about what they're doing. I want to help them in any way that I can. I was very sincere about that. And I think they're very sincere in their reciprocation back to me, despite what a handful of them are saying, Mike McHale. So.
Okay. So do you have any specific initiatives that people should expect you to implement if you're successful in running for chair?
I think probably the biggest thing and the most audacious thing would be for us to run our own primary election.
Yep.
And the Republican Party should do that. Some people have said, well, we have to obey the law. We have to obey us, go along with SB 54. But I've had this discussion with Senator Lee and with Rob Axon before this convention. What I understand is if we choose not to follow SB 54, if we were to pass a bylaw like they passed a few years ago that said if you gather signatures, you're going to be removed from the Republican Party. The threat was if we do that, then the state's not going to run our primary election for us. And for me, we have precincts, we have a whole organization. It's statewide. It was there, it's been there for 100 years, and it's really well organized. We could easily run our own primary election using the volunteers at the precinct level. People would go and cast their vote, and the vote would be counted where it was cast. We wouldn't be participating in this month-long ordeal of the state elections with universal mail-in ballots. We would have a primary election. And again, that's our prerogative. As a party, we have the right of association, and we can choose our candidates under whatever method we choose. And we could say that we're going to go signatures. If the SCC and the party said we want to do away with conventions altogether, we're going to have an open primary or all signatures, that's the prerogative of the Republican Party. And right now, the Republican Party, both at the SCC level and the executive committee and state delegates, and I think party-wide, has said that they would prefer to choose their own candidate rather than let the lieutenant governor force a fraudulent primary down our throats.
Are there concerns about costs associated with doing it that way?
There would be some costs. When I was talking to Rob Axon about this before the convention, he said, well, it would cost us $6 million. And I just kind of shrugged like, well, I guess $6 million is a lot of money. But as I was doing the math, I had in my mind that we could probably do it for $500,000. When I was talking to Senator Lee about it, before I could get to the punchline, he said, we can do it for $300,000. And then I went back and I looked, and Carson Jorgensen actually had said something similar about running our own primaries for around $300,000. And that's the cost of printing ballots. I think we could probably even do it for less than that. But yeah, I suspect we could do it for $300,000 to $500,000, and I'm not worried about the ability to raise money if we went out and said we're going to run our own primary and we need to raise some money. I think Republicans, the 950,000 registered Republicans in Utah, would help support that effort.
Okay, we have about 30 seconds. Do you have any closing thoughts for people, and then where can they find you?
I've said the biggest motivator that I've ever witnessed is realization. When you realize something that you didn't maybe realize before, like when Luke Skywalker realized that Princess Leia was his sister. And sometimes we just need to step back and realize that, hey, we are an independent party and we have our own right of association. If we do that and then we communicate and then we have that affinity, that loyalty to each other, I think it's a winning combination. You can go and find me on my website. It's Lyman for Utah. That's FOR Utah, and a lot of stuff going on social media right now. It's just going crazy. So I've never seen so much action around a state party race. Kind of exciting.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, good luck on Saturday, Phil. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you so much, Goud.
Okay.
See ya.
Yeah. Okay. We should have. Okay, fantastic. To Eric. No, it's not a debate, Eric. Rob will be on hopefully in a few minutes here, and then we'll have another interview with him. I hope that was informative to people. If you have any questions, I got one question to ask Rob from the audience. I'll ask him that. If anybody has any questions, write them in the comments. I will ask them. As long as they're not like rude or something. How much and why? Okay, it's a good question. Good question, Jensen. I don't know the answer to that, but let's see if Rob has any thoughts. Okay, let's see. So while we wait for Rob, let me continue I guess I'll circle back to what I was talking about. Like I was saying, in Florida, they actually have their attorney general is going after private companies for allowing men into women's locker rooms. Okay, and I am completely supportive of this. And just as an aside, I just got to tell you, this wind is annoying me so much. It's like making so much noise. I don't like noise. But anyway, there's a real philosophical difference in Utah about how to handle this. And we have a lot of people on the Republican side who will cite this idea of the private sector, private rights, whenever they don't want to do something. So when we had the whole debate about banning men from women's locker rooms, which we didn't actually do in Utah, instead we restricted them. Instead of doing a categorical ban, which is what I and others wanted, we ended up with this compromise because Kira Birkeland was a very difficult legislator to work with, and not actually the woman promoter or whatever that she claimed to be. So according to her, she does not think the government should tell the private sector how to address these issues. When she's talking about this, she's talking about men in women's bathrooms and locker rooms. She said, I hope the private sector will start offering more single occupancy facilities for everyone's benefit. And here's what I want to say about this. See, a lot of Utahns are overly nice. Sometimes I think it's a little bit of being toxically nice. And so it means that when we were going down this path of trying to categorically ban men from women's spaces, and actually it should be vice versa as well. I don't think a trans man or a woman transitioning into a man should be able to go into men's spaces either, because there's issues with that as well. Not as much the safety issue, because women tend to be smaller than men, but there are other issues that involve men that mean that woman should not be in a man's space. So, but what I'll say is this: the legislature wanted this whole thing about increasing the number of single occupancy facilities for privacy, but we don't need that. What we actually need you to do is to acknowledge the truth, which is men can't become women and women cannot become men. There's some small percentage of people that are succumbing to a mental illness called gender dysphoria, and they are trying to change themselves. We don't need to go and accommodate that. They should go into a single occupancy facility or the facility that matches their birth gender. If they are uncomfortable with doing that, that's not for us to try to figure out. That's for them to figure out. Instead, we should continue on as society has continued for thousands of years, and you just have common facilities because it's cheaper to maintain, especially, there's a reason why they don't have 500 individual locker rooms when you go into a gym, right? It's expensive. You have to clean all of that stuff. You have to maintain it. That's not feasible. So instead, the answer is you restrict mentally ill people, which are what trans people are, from going into the facilities of the opposite sex. It's simple. It's all simple. But in Utah, we can never get stuff this simple because you have people like Kira Birkeland who, she just was toxic on a personal level, but maybe toxically nice, but really just toxically annoying. Okay, we got Rob on. Let's see. Let's get Rob on. Hey, Rob, how are you?
Hey, Goud, sorry for the delay. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I see you are in the car.
In the car between different Meet the Delegate events, trying to get out and meet as many folks as possible and get their perspective and their ideas.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the chair race. And I wanted to start by, can you talk about why you're running for re-election?
Yeah, for me, the key thing was I believe that the Utah Republican Party can be a massive force for good. And I look in the time that I've been involved in the party and involved in Utah's political space, I've seen times and ways where the party does a good job and ways that it doesn't. And the places where I see that it doesn't do a good job were oftentimes not out of malice by anybody. It was a lack of capacity, a lack of continuity, a lack of structure, and a lack of funding. So it's like, let's build that side. And so I felt, in running for chair, that I could utilize my experience, my network, and some perspective in building that. And my desire to run for reelection is, I think that building on what we've been able to accomplish these last 2 years will further expand on the good that can be done by the party. Like I said, I believe the party can be a force for good, but it can also be a massive distraction. Look at the grassroots. You and I both came up through the grassroots. That's how we got our start in this. The grassroots, oftentimes you're spinning your wheels. You're doing phenomenal things in your precinct. You're doing.
Uh-oh. Okay. Well, hold on. Let's see if he comes back.
Let's get past that. Let's make sure that we are supporting both our activists, our advocates, our candidates, our grassroots, our donors, and even our elected officials. Let's elevate all aspects of the party. And I think there's a lot that we can do to deliver on that.
Okay. So my next question here is, there was big news this weekend. You were
Did I lose you, Goud?
You lost. I can't. I heard him. I could hear you. Come back.
Have I lost you?
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Can
I hear you now.
Okay. I didn't hear. There was like a few seconds when you were talking when you cut out, but you came back on. So, so this weekend, news broke that President Trump endorsed you. So, can you talk about how that endorsement came about, what it means for the race?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I'm humbled and appreciative. It's not something I take lightly, and I'm one like you who cares deeply about the direction of this country and feels that Donald Trump is a man who has said what he believes. He has said what he was going to fight for, and he has followed through on that. He has had our back as a country. And, you don't get 30 plus trillion dollars in debt just by Democrats. There's been a bunch of Republicans who have done that. You don't create this massive government that gets in the way of people's lives just on Democrats' backs. Republicans have done that too. So having somebody who's approaching things different than what we've seen in President Trump is, I think, incredibly helpful. And President Trump, his team, they saw what we did. They saw my commitment to not only making sure that we were doing what needs to happen here in Utah, but trying to be a force multiplier and going into Arizona, going into Nevada, and helping knock doors, helping organize voter turnout, help engage with voters of all types. But we spent a lot of time trying to engage into the LDS community and engage into neighborhoods and areas that have people who have Utah ties. And it was invaluable. We moved the needle and we helped contribute to all of that. So I think President Trump was able to see what we deliver, and he knew that he had an ally and a friend in me, and was generous and kind enough to endorse my reelection.
So on that's really interesting about taking LDS kind of like what I would say maybe the base out of Utah, and using them to go to these LDS communities in other states to do outreach. Is that an idea that came out of our party, or did that come from the national party? Can you give us some insight into that?
Yeah, so this was an idea that I had. And so when I was first elected 2 years ago, and I'm sure other people have those same ideas. I'm not saying I'm the only one, but 2 years ago when I was elected and became a member of the RNC, I went to the RNC with that proposal. I said, Utahns are good at going and leaving home to knock doors. We're comfortable doing that. We've done that all over the world, whether you're going and campaigning for campaigns, or knocking doors for pest control, or summer sales, or, of course, during a time as a missionary. So for me, I thought Utahns could be good in being this force multiplier. Plus, you look, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, and New Mexico, those states immediately surrounding us in my lifetime have moved from right-leaning or solidly Republican to left-leaning or solidly Democrat. We have to push back on that. I approached first Ronna McDaniel. She was the chair of the RNC at the time. And she seemed like a nice enough lady, but it never really was going anywhere. So I thought, okay, then we'll just do it on our own. So I began raising funds from outside of Utah specifically for that purpose, and working with the Trump campaign directly and Turning Point USA and some other groups. And then we built the apparatus that we knew we could make a difference and deliver for at that time it was President Trump. When I started, we didn't know who our nominee was going to be. I wanted to be there helping whomever our nominee was. Ultimately, it was Trump. And also, thankfully, last year we got Chairman Michael Whatley in place. And unlike his predecessor, he was focused on winning the race. He was focused on leveraging all of our assets. And I was grateful for his partnership.
Yeah, very cool. Okay. Now, so I did get a question from off of X. They wanted to ask you this. I know recently there was a debate where you talked about that you had to register to be a lobbyist, right?
Uh-huh.
And their question was about how long have you been lobbying, but it didn't require you to register yet.
Well, that was the only lobbying thing that I have done. I've been a consultant. So I worked for Senator Lee for 13 years. The last 2 years, I've been in the private sector helping kind of startups and some businesses in the energy space, some nonprofits, really all here in Utah. And so I've been focusing on them in developing their business strategy, business development, different kind of like go-to-market ideas. Uh, the first time that I was doing any lobbying, that I had to do lobbying, I registered. I mean, that's state law. So registered for lobbying and help this one client on one issue. Anytime under Utah state law, if you are going and actually trying to get a law changed to impact the benefit of an association, a principal, a business, an organization, you're supposed to register. And actually, if you look at the way that the law is written, you probably, if you're the party chair, actually might have to register as a lobbyist. I don't know, like that's kind of this gray area, but I had not registered last year, even though I was up there advocating for the party's process. But this year, had that one client issue. But aside from that, all of my time up at the legislature was actually spent fighting for those issues that are important to the party.
Okay. Another kind of, I guess, maybe an issue that's been floating around in this campaign generally is the signature issue with Governor Cox and how that was handled. So I'm kind of wondering, can you address that?
Yeah, I mean, it's one more example of Utah law, and specifically Utah election law, that in its entire structure creates conflict. And so this issue of signatures actually didn't start as a space to withhold information around signatures. It was used in this idea of promoting like privacy of individual information or private information. And this was maybe about 10 years ago or so. And you had this idea of protecting privacy. They realized, wow, this is creating too much of an issue where too many people in the voter registration rolls are being withheld or private. And so they tried to make some adjustments. It hasn't been enough. And what's happened is now statewide, at least 45% of our voter registration files are withheld.
Wow.
In Utah County, it's getting closer to 60%. And so what that means is like even Republican members, I know that there are between 950 and a million, or 950,000 and a million registered Republicans, but about 45% of them, I can't know their name. I don't know their address. I don't know anything about them. Like it doesn't make sense. And so that was problematic on its face. And I've been trying to get this changed for a number of years. We've made incremental improvements, but still woefully inadequate. Well, that was used as justification, and it's been used to prevent accessing ballot signature petitions. And so if somebody is a withheld voter and they sign on to a ballot petition for ballot access to a candidate, they're now withheld and redacted. And so extremely problematic. And it creates a lack of transparency, which is why we're now talking past each other or in conflict with one another. A lot of the nonsense from the last year would go away, and we'd actually realize, oh, we're actually on the same page on a number of issues. but for the lack of transparency. So this has to be changed. Gratefully, this last legislative session, some laws were changed that now as a candidate, you can view those ballot petitions in a non-redacted form, even with the withheld voters. If it's a race that you have a challenger that's running against you. And I made sure that we worked with the legislature, we got the party added to that. So if any candidate is trying to get signatures to gain access as a nominee or a candidate for our party, we have the right to see that. That had not been the case prior to this recent law change this last legislative session. Still have a long ways to go. We still have a bunch of these voter registration files being withheld as private, and that just makes zero sense.
Okay. As part of that new law, would it give the party any sort of ability to challenge someone's eligibility for the primary ballot if you went and reviewed these signatures and thought, no, you don't have it, or there's problems with this?
Absolutely, because think right now, when in previous years, you're going to challenge, but if 40% is all blacked out, redacted, you actually can't articulate what your challenge is because you're not even able to see it. Now with this law change, we'll be able to see the information, see who it is, check their eligibility, and if there is a deficiency, it actually gives us the ability to articulate the challenge instead of it just being, I believe that there's something nefarious going on, whether that's true or not. Now we can say, hey, it appears that something, whether intentional or not, is nefariously happening because this percentage of people were not qualified. We can actually make the argument.
Okay. I think you're sounding a little weird to me. I don't know what happened there. You sounded kind of robotic. I understood what you said. You sounded a little robotic. Try talking again.
That was weird. Do you need me to call back again?
Yeah. Do you want to call? You want to go out and call back one more time? All right, thanks. Okay. It's good until we'll have him call back in, and we'll try this again. I think we have a couple more minutes we can do here. So, and I just lost my mouse. Okay, here we go. I'm using my gimpy hand to try to move this around. It's not as good. Okay. I'm wondering if this, I'll try to ask this caucus night cost question. I'm wondering about that too. Although I kind of want to ask him about lessons learned, right? Because I think we want to see, like, I'm sure he has some thoughts. Okay, you back?
I'm back. I don't know if it solved the problem or not, but
I can still understand you. You sound a little bit like robotic. It's kind of funny. Like, it sounds like you have a cold. Okay. Well, I guess you're not. I can't really understand you now, Rob. There's a lot of noise. It might be because you're out in the middle of nowhere. Okay. I guess we'll call it quits there. I'll let people know. Okay, you guys. So if he gets back on, we'll try asking one more question, and then I think everybody knows you can see Rob on social media as well. I think he's just Rob Axon. Let me look him up real quick for you, so you can kind of. And Phil is Phil_Lyman. Rob is, let's see, that's Axon. I think it's just Rob_Axon, I believe. Let me see if I can figure this out. Of course, my computer now is slow as well. Let's see what he says. Oh, he says something about 2 minutes. Maybe I'll come back on. Okay, let's see what we got here. Hold on. I'm just trying to see what his Axon. Oh, actually, sorry. It's at Robert Axon. For the longest time, I thought his name was Axum, but it's actually Axon. AXSON. So, okay, yeah, he said to. Oh, okay. So anyway, I hope these interviews were helpful to people as you make a decision about who to vote for. I think I've made my own views clear, but I just want to make this clear to everyone. I always want interviews on the show to be fair to everybody because like you can, if you know me, if you follow me on social media, you'll know who I'm voting for. I'm pretty transparent, but I want people to come on the show no matter what, because we want to hear from everybody and to really have a good sense of where they all are on issues. Is Rob still on here? Maybe. Let me try. Let's try one more time. All right. Is that any better? Let's see.
It sounds like it might be the same. Apologies. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Okay, no worries. I'll just let everyone know your social media and stuff, and then to reach out to you if they have more questions. Thanks for coming on.
I have them reach out, robaxon.com. They can find me on there. Rob@robaxon is my email. Look forward to talking to as many delegates as possible, and I appreciate the time, Goud. Sorry, the connection's bad.
Cool. Thanks, Rob. Bye. Okay, cool. So anyway, that's what I'll say to you guys. You have decisions to make on Saturday. It's going to be super exciting. I'll be there. If you see your elected officials, go and ask them questions. This is your opportunity. The delegates are their top constituents, and so they should be happy to answer any questions that you have. Some of them will try to run away and act like, like you're being inappropriate by asking them a tough question, but this is one of those opportunities to do so. And I've already told you I've got questions for Amy Winder-Newton. If I see her, I will ask them. We'll see if she shows up, though. I've been hearing these rumors that she doesn't plan on running for re-election, so maybe she's going to take a break from politics. So let's see here. So let me just finish up my last point, and then we'll just call it. So yeah, so you got Rob, you got Phil. In the last couple minutes, we'll talk about, I'm just going to show you this one last tweet I had done. And I think if my computer now is like slow beyond belief, I'll tell you, people, I need a new computer so bad. It's so sad. And I know I talk about this every time, but man, it just drives me up the wall. I'm going to have to bite the bullet at some point and buy a new computer. Okay, let me try to pull something up here. So I've got, one of these will come up, I think. Okay, here we go. Let's get this tweet up. I'll close with my favorite topic, which is why you should oppose the trans agenda. This guy, see, my computer, something happened here. I wonder if it's on my end. That sucks. Okay. So this guy posted, his name's Dustin Gettle. So he's the mayor of Midvale right now. He's gay and he has a husband. I think he's married actually. And there's this whole, if government facilities cannot fly pride flags, right? Actually, there's a bunch, they can only fly certain flags now. So they can fly like the American flag, which makes sense. They can fly the Utah flag. They can fly the flag of their city. They can fly the veterans flag, the POW flag, right? There are specific flags that they can fly and anything else they cannot fly, which includes pride flags, which makes sense because pride flags are extremely divisive and they're pushing an agenda onto your children. That's the only reason to fly them. And I'm not talking, if some individual wants to fly it, go for it. Although I'll be honest with you, as a gay man myself, years ago, I used to fly the normal rainbow flag around Pride, just because I thought it was kind of cool. I won't even touch that thing anymore. They have perverted it and made it so the whole thing disgusts me because it's all these people pushing an agenda onto children. So I just can't appreciate it. So what he said is that Utah's LGBTQ youth are especially at risk of suicide. In 2022, 50% seriously considered suicide and 17% attempted suicide, according to a Utah survey by the Trevor Project, a suicide prevention organization for LGBTQ youth. Now, let me just say, the Trevor Project has a grooming problem. They have this whole messaging service where adults can message with children and then it disappears. So I don't really, don't let your kids get on a Trevor Project. But I thought his statistics were interesting. And here's what I want to say. The reason first of all, you need to cut the TQ plus off of the LGB, right? Because the TQ plus, that is all people that are having mental health problems and they are mentally ill. And so, of course, they're going to have higher rates of suicide because they are inherently having all sorts of, I mean, these are people that can't even accept the body that they were born into, right? They want to change the way that they look, and it's basically not possible to do that, right? Because you can't change your sex. And so that's a life. If I, for example, thought I was a woman and I'm trying to transition into a woman, that's obviously never going to happen. So that just leads you to a very unhappy life, because you're never going to be satisfied. And if you know people like this, they're constantly getting plastic surgeries, they're constantly getting, oh, I got my lips done, oh, I got my nose done, oh, I got a boob job, oh, I got bottom surgery. Don't even get me started. I'm taking hormones, like all this weird stuff. How does that going to make you happy? I don't understand. It's obviously not. Now, with the LGB, and this is what I want to address. In Utah, there is a concerted effort by left-wing groups to push the idea that if you are lesbian, gay, or bisexual, that you are at risk and that you will not be able to live a normal life in Utah. And I know this because I've been to some of these meetings. For example, recently I went to a meeting called LALU, and it's LGBTQ and Allied Lawyers of Utah. And it was just crazy. So I walked into this room. It was at the University of Utah at their law school. There's a panel of lawyers talking. I knew one of them. It's this guy, Eli McCann. If you read the Trib, he actually writes a column for them. He's on Equality Utah's board. And yeah, this is all like, so they have this panel where they're talking about being a gay lawyer or an LGBTQ plus lawyer. All the lawyers on the panel were either gay or lesbian. And what struck me is that all of them were talking about how much discrimination there is in the legal field. And I just thought to myself, I don't even know what you're talking about. One guy said he's a partner of a law firm, and his biggest, the discrimination that he encountered is that his husband likes to wear dresses to their firm events, and he thought people would be uncomfortable with that. And all I thought to myself is, I don't understand why your husband needs to wear a dress to a firm event. Like, part of what's happening is the left is trying to turn those of us that are gay into freaks, right? So instead of just being a man who is attracted to men, right, who dresses like a man, around other people, they become these weird, like, oh, I want to wear a dress, or I want to have pink hair, and I just don't understand it. What's the point? And of course, when you are in normal society, you're expected to dress certain ways. Why can't you just do it and not make it seem like it's this awful thing? That's just normal life. Everybody's doing it. And so I think there's this real effort in Utah to push this idea that there's tons and tons of discrimination against lesbians, gays, and bisexual. And I just don't think it's true. Okay. There is discrimination if you are a conservative member of that group, as I have pointed out multiple times. But if all you're doing, if you're a liberal, which unfortunately, most gays are, you're not going to have any problems living in Utah. In fact, people are going to be celebrating you, acting like you're special just because you're gay, not based on any talent that you have and things like that. So I don't know what you're complaining about. Just go live your life. Enjoy it. And to those law students, man, you can have a great life. Just focus on doing a good job, contributing to your neighborhood, contributing to your profession. You'll live a great life. You don't need to worry about all this alleged discrimination because it doesn't exist. Okay, we are at time. So with that, thank you all for listening. And for those of you who are state delegates, I will see you on Saturday. If you're there, come and say hi to me. I'll have probably a cast on because, like I said, I fractured my right elbow like an old man. But and I'm looking forward to seeing how these races go. These are hot races. This chair race and the secretary race, this is exciting. I think we've had some really good interviews on the show. And if you have any comments, feel free to send them in. Otherwise, I will see you Saturday, and then come back on Monday. We'll have another show. Okay.